I invite you to take your minds back and you open your Bibles to Numbers, the 20th chapter, as we get back into our study. We may feel like we've been wandering 40 years before this is over, but we're picking up and just want to make sure we're with a time frame. What month of the year did the people of Israel abide in Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin? So we're east of the Dead Sea, southeast of there in the wilderness of Zin. Kadesh Barnea is where they sent the spies to spy out the land, and now we're into the 40th year, 38 years after leaving Egypt. They're having to wander in the wilderness because of their lack of faith, disobedience. Did not go into when the land spied it out, and as we heard in our lessons with Brett, but also in our Bible study, that they did not put obedience connected with their faith, and they lacked the faith to do what God said do. But there was two men that stood up. What don't we see their names? Caleb, Joshua. Not all people have defiled their garments in the New Testament church either. So we can stand for what's right and do what's right, but they had to suffer the consequences of that as well. But they were able to go into that land. So as Numbers, the 20th chapter begins, which says that even the children of Israel, even the whole congregation, came in the wilderness of Zin in what month? The first month. Now you turn with me to Numbers, the 33rd chapter, and we'll put this perspective of what we're going to be seeing in this last part of chapter of our lesson 4. Notice in chapter 33 and verse 37, they journeyed from Kadesh and encamped in Mount Hor in the edge of the land of Edom. So Mount Hor is where, who's going to die? In our study today, Aaron's going to die, Mount Hor. Verse 38 says, Aaron the priest went up to Mount Hor at the commandment of Jehovah and died there in the 40th year after the children would come out of the land of Egypt in what month? 5th month. Miriam dies in the 1st month, Numbers 20 and verse 1. Now we pick up as Numbers 33 recaps all the places they journeyed during those 38 years, a lot of the places. And the emphasis is the fact that they're on the border of Edom, and we're going to find out why that is. Why didn't they go through Edom? Our chapter, Numbers 20, will be dealing with that. And then also he died in the 5th month. And so we're looking at that time frame of that 40th year after coming out of captivity, but the 38th year of their wandering after their disobedience in Kadesh Barnea. And there we get a picture of a time frame that we're looking at. So we're at the end of that journey, and as we'll get around Edom, we'll come on up to Mount Pisgah, and who's going to die there before they enter the land of Canaan? Moses, and we're going to learn why in our study today. But it's good to see each and every one of you here. I know we've been busy in the meeting, and our minds have been in the Word of God all week long, and that's a good thing. And I hope you hadn't got tired yet, so we're going to continue our study. So who dies and is buried in Kadesh before they go to Mount Hor? It's Miriam, and we've seen her with leprosy, and Moses prayed for God to cleanse her, and she was going against Moses, and God made it plain that that's my servant. I speak to him face to face without seeing God. He sees the glory of God. But she dies and buried. It's kind of interesting. These principal characters and Moses and his family with Aaron and so forth are mentioned here as they are not going to enter the land of Canaan. And Miriam is indeed one of them. Our number 24, why did Moses and Aaron fail to enter the promised land? That's where we start today. And it's interesting to see here the complaining takes place in verse 2. They assemble themselves together against whom? Against God? Well, really they are, but I can't see God, but I can see Moses. And Moses, I've got a problem with you. And again, they're suffering, so they have to blame somebody. And they blame both Moses and Aaron. He's against both of them. The people strove with Moses and spake, saying, would that we had died when our brethren died before Jehovah. When was that? What do you think? It'll tell you, but I think we can put it together. And there's a lesson there, if that's true. Where have we seen them die before Jehovah recently? Number 16, the rebellion of Korah. If they died just a common death, God, I haven't been sent by you. How did suddenly a lot of people die? Earth. And back then, that was so horrible. Thousands of people died because they complained about it. But what are they saying here? That'd been better now. That'd have been better now. I'm suffering. Just all of a sudden be taken up like that. And so it's kind of interesting what we can adjust to and what we prefer than what we're going through now. And so, but if we were part of those people trying to run away and the earth is following us up, that would be horrible. I'd like to die that way instead of the way we're going. And it just tells you our immediate needs are usually what's more important than anything else. And especially when there's suffering in water and so forth. So, and why have you brought us out in the assembly, brought the assembly of Jehovah in the wilderness that we should die here? And we and our beasts. So you got their cattle, and they are going through the difficulty of lack of water. Wherefore you made us to come out of Egypt to bring us into this evil place. It is no place of seed, or figs, or vines, or pomegranates. Yeah, Moses could say, it's over in the land of Canaan where we're supposed to have been going. But that's the promised land, not the wilderness. And so here, I want you, if you put yourself in the minds, in the lives of those who are complaining, I can understand that. Immediate problem, a sudden death would be better this elongated death we're going to have to do. I can understand the reasoning behind that, especially when you're hurting, to make it right against God's servants. But Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly unto the door of the tent of meeting. So where are they now? The tent of meeting. That's the tabernacle. We've seen how it's constructed and how it's supposed to be constructed, how they tear it down, build it back up. We've seen all of that. And he fell upon their faces, and who appeared with them? The glory of Jehovah appeared unto them. I say, maybe I'm not going to be complaining too much. The glory of Jehovah appeared unto them, Moses and Aaron. And Jehovah appeared unto them, and Jehovah spake unto Moses, saying, take the rod and assemble the congregation. Here's the rod that he had used earlier in Rephidim. And we've seen that the rod of Aaron blossomed, and they had put it in a place. But here's the rod, and assemble the congregation, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak unto the rock before their eyes, and that it give forth its water, and thou shalt bring forth to them water out of the rock, so thou shalt give the congregation and their cattle drink. So Moses obeyed, didn't he? Initially. Did he take the rock or just stand, rod and just stand, I'm going to give water out of this place? What did he do? He took the instrument, God had commanded. He took the rod from before Jehovah, and as he had commanded him. So far, so good. But we asked the question, why did they fail to enter the promised land? We're going to see this happen. Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock and said to them, hear ye now, ye rebels. I'm sure that was passionate. Shall we bring you forth water out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand and smote the rock with his rod twice, and water came out how? Abundantly. It came out abundantly. And the congregation drank, and their cattle drank, and hey, problem solved. And we begin to think about this. Moses lifted up his hand. He smote the rock. What was he told to do? Speak to the rock. And water came forth. And how does Moses, he calls them rebels. I think his anger and wrath is there. He's kind of lost control of what he's supposed to be doing, because he's just angry at them. You're rebelling against Moses and Aaron. And I think that may be implied here, not the fact that he's trying to promote himself, but he says, shall we bring you forth water out of this rock? No way can I bring forth water out of this rock. Why are you complaining against me? I think that may have been the angle Moses has, but he's already let his anger and his speech that is expressing that anger defile him. And he is now disobeying God. And could you say this was the reason why Moses did not enter the land of Canaan? Aaron goes along with it. Aaron doesn't enter the land of Canaan. It's because of this. They did not fulfill their part of it. So you got rebelling people. Understand that. Can you understand Moses being one who is just frustrated with all the time he's been with these people? And back in Exodus 17, we had a problem with water. And God said another place, but God does this to test his people. God will test us. Do we really believe? Did he not test them? You go and spy out the land. And what was interesting to me, because I forget in reading that, God specified, I want you to see about their cities. I want you to see about their land. I want you to see about the people. And God knows exactly. They're going to be looking at giants. The land's going to be good, but we're not going to be able to conquer them. God knew this. Moses specified, tell me what the people like. So it wasn't the fact, well, we were surprised and really we see things, but God had commanded Moses to command the people to find out those details. Why is that? They're going to see giants, God. Let's just kind of placate them a little bit. Like one time I was told to not preach so long in a gospel meeting because we got weak members there and they may not come back. So we lower the standard for everybody else instead of raising the standard of what they want to do about, and elderships do that. We don't want to drive them away. So we got to be out of here at 8 o'clock and announcements have to be made. You can't let, at the end of the sermon, it's got to end up at that point. So you get your sermon. I said, well, what if you got a guy that leaves a lot of announcements? He says a lot of things. But so you just cut your stuff short in order to placate that. That's a wrong way to grow a congregation. You get numbers. I mean, you may get 300 on Sunday morning, but 80 comes on Sunday night. Wednesday night, even less than that. What have you done for the people when you don't raise them up to have a love for the Word of God? I don't care how long it takes. How long it is. And it's just interesting that here God is not saying, well, we're not going to let them see reality. But reality stands, they're giants, I'm not, but who's on our side? It's God, isn't it? And we may have great barriers to overcome that we just can't handle. But God will never forsake us. He's never going to turn his back on us. He wants to help us. And one of the series I'm getting ready to do in Tacoma area, in a meeting coming up, one of the first lessons, God is there to help us. He's there to help us. And we forget that sometimes. He's not there to condemn you. He's not there. He didn't come to condemn you. He came to save you. He's there to help. And it's God Almighty. And if he doesn't do miracles, then he doesn't help. That's not true. More and more, I get older and older, I'm relying on the providence of God. I don't know how this is going to work out, God, but I pray that it work out to your will and help me get through the little dark life I'm living right now, where I don't have a clue of what I should be doing in order to help, or what I should be doing to this relationship and that relationship. And sometimes we just have to rely on him. And it's interesting when you do that, how sometimes the answers come. That's not a miracle. But I think God is putting things out there to help us when we ask him. Seek and you shall find. Ask and it'll be given to you. God is always there to help. So is there anything too hard for God to accomplish? No. And he doesn't have to do miracles to do that. Moses and Aaron is failing because they don't sanctify God in the eyes of the people. Am I right about that? Let's notice what he says. When he smote the rock in verse 11 with his rod twice, water came forth abundantly. Verse 12, Jehovah said unto Moses, because ye believe not in me to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel. Here's Moses. Now this is my problem with you, Moses. You didn't believe me. To do what? To sanctify me in the eyes of the people. David?
I think Moses did two things that failed to sanctify God. Number one, he disobeyed what God said. Earlier, God said strike the rock. This time, he said speak to it. Secondly, I think by the very language he used, must we fetch water for you, made it sound like through his power, he was getting the water out of the rock, which is certainly ridiculous. So in two ways, I think he didn't sanctify God. And also, furthermore, I would say that the people that think instrumental music is okay because of the Old Testament, it's like this right here is an example. God said in the Old Testament, instrumental music. New Testament, sing. And people need to look at this as an example to show, do what God says at the time he said.
Yeah. You may be right about Moses said, I'm going to give it to you. It didn't sanctify God. I'm thinking, I agree with your first point. I'm thinking that more I look at that, his part of his passionate, you rebels, must I bring forth water? Am I supposed to do this by myself? And being a messenger of God, he knew God was going to do that. I don't think he was not sanctifying God because it's all about me. I disagree with that. But you may be right. Because I'm not going to give it to you. Well, here it is. And I'm doing it on my own. Well, to your point, he struck it. He struck it how many times? Because what's that? Because he's mad. It didn't make a difference 3 or 4 or 5 times. God just said strike it. He struck it twice. I think the anger is there. And as he said before, as others would say, like with Elisha, the idea of the king of Israel said, am I God to clear leprosy? I think that's the same Moses does out of frustration. So I give Moses that side, not saying that I'm going to bring forth rock and it's not God. And I'm going to take that glory. I don't believe that. I believe it's that part of anger. And God speaks about the rashness of his speech. Rashness of his speech, not his action. The rashness of his speech. And so let's notice that in Psalm 106, where he speaks about the things that God has had to suffer. And he brings forth these events before God where they've disobeyed him and not set him apart. And part of this is this incident. In Psalm 106 and verse 32 is what they've done to God. In this verse, they angered him also at the waters of Meribah, so that it went ill with Moses for their sakes. It went ill for Moses for their sakes, because they were rebellious against his spirit. And he spake rashly, unadvisedly with his lips. So, ye rebels, I'm the one going to bring forth, and shall we bring you forth water out of this rock? It's going to happen. Shall we do that? And as David said, that maybe we're going to do it now, and that's why he's disobeyed God. Or it could be that this is part of his rashness with his lips. He speaks in language that it's frustrating, that you've always complained against me. I'm not the one that could ever do it anyway. I think he still believes that. He took the rod, but in his anger, he disobeyed. And so I'm not eliminating his actions from why he doesn't sanctify God, but I'm just saying that this may be part of the rashness of his lips, that he wasn't taking on the glory of being able to do that himself. But the language may indicate that, so you can kind of make up your mind about that. But the rashness of his lips, I think, when our heart is angry, out of the abundance of our heart, our mouth speaks, and that he had disobeyed God, he's full of anger, and his speech betrays him of what he's done. He's causing rebellious people. And they rebelled constantly against him and Aaron. So I think that anger there is there. So this is part of, but sometimes to say, well, not because he disobeyed God, it's because he was rash in his speech that got him out of the land of Canaan. I think there's a combination there, not just one reason. And that combination may include what David has said, but I think that's the part he just trying to say, you think, am I got to bring forth, I'm going to do it, but am I the one that's doing that? God's the only one who could do that. Why are you complaining against me? And Moses would make that complaint before. God, they're on me. You're the one who brought us out here. And he made that comment against God earlier. So both the point and David's point that I think is worthy of note, did he not tell him at Rephidim to strike the rock? In Exodus 17? That was his commandment. Strike the rock. And again, God is always testing. If you didn't believe me, you didn't believe me to sanctify me. So if you set apart God, you would have struck the rock, not in anger. You struck the rock, and the first time, and water came forth. And the people were fed. Now he tells them to speak to the rock. Speak to the rock. Was he testing Moses? His problem with anger, all of those things. I don't know. But it was a test that he failed. The first test he did fine. But here, as we come to the 40th year, we see that God gives him a new command. And I think the comparison David is making is very true. God in the Old Testament said we're to strike the strings of a harp, right? Everywhere, you read a lot of places in the Psalm, you sing praises unto God with a harp. And you're plucking strings, you're making music. And yet we strike that. But now, how does God want us to worship him? We speak to one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. We don't play on the instrument. And the idea of in Ephesians 5 is that we're striking the strings of the heart. That's our worship today. Well, they did it in the Old Testament. Well, he could say, God, you let me strike it back here in Rephidim. Why can't he do it here now? When God commands, that's when we obey. And it's the timing of it. It's just interesting to me that even in these 40 years, he's told him to strike it. Now he condemns him for striking it because you didn't believe me. I told you to speak to it, to sanctify me in the eyes of the people. And therefore, what's going to happen? Therefore, ye shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. Because these are the waters of Meribah, the idea of strife with God, strife with Moses and Aaron, the people against him, because the children of Israel strove with Jehovah, and he was sanctified in them. He had to step in and be sanctified. David's point, well, Moses, you think you're bringing water out of the rock? I am. He may be overcoming that. But eventually he gave them the water. He was more powerful than a disobedient Moses. And yet both times, here is this times, even though they rebelled and Moses disobeyed God, God still gave him water, didn't he? So whether you think Moses took that glory away from God, said we're going to bring it forth, or he was just exasperated and with anger, who am I? I'm just a man. I'm not God. You think we're going to bring it forth? But what he did was disobey God by doing what God had not commanded. And when you did it close to 40 years ago, well, we did in the Old Testament. No one doubts that, but you have the New Testament. That's what we're under today. And you don't read about the church and there's assembling and worship to be able, idea of playing instruments. So what's to me, what a drastic change. And I think we ask the question, applying the instrumental music question, why the drastic change? Because worship was changed. They played the instruments. That was part of the temple worship. David had The people had people who were singers, but they had people who played instruments. But something changed, and the new covenant, we said, well, it's more spiritual. That's a part of that. We don't have a sacrificial lamb. Jesus was our sacrificial lamb, and so we offer up sacrifices to God. That's our spiritual work that we're doing. We're offering up ourselves daily as a spiritual sacrifice unto God. But in our worship, that changed. And what else changed among the Jews? And David, I got you. I'll give you a minute. But what else changed among the Jews, as far as the Jews in Jesus' time? What happened after AD 70? Priesthoods. What lineage are you? And you don't have the temple any longer. There was a change. There was a change in the priesthood, wasn't there? Because who is our high priest? Not Aaron, not Eleazar, not his descendants. Who's the high priest? Jesus is. And when the high priest temple worship, it all changed. You got New Testament Christians meeting in the temple arena. They're singing, not playing. They're worshiping God. Jesus Christ is the high priest. All of us are priests. The whole worship concept, worship practice changed. So God never says, thou shalt not play instruments of music. It's that here is the change that's happening, and we see it on all fronts. You change the priesthood, you change worship. And the change in the playing of instruments is just a stark one because it's so prevalent, and then it's so silent. So what are our friends in the religious world? Well, they did it over there, they can do it now. Well, Moses struck the rock, and now he says, speak to it. Who didn't get to go to the land of Canaan? And that's the reason. We obey when God speaks. And he has spoken, and that's what we do. Now, I'll get David. Oh, well, I'm sorry. You can add something to that. Well, is there anything else that changed the tip? No, sacrifices, the priesthood changed, and we just see them, they're worshiping in the temple. Paul and would go into synagogues. The Jewish practices were there, but there was a change of things. And so he didn't say, thou shalt not. He said, here's the way it's supposed to be. And God didn't say, thou shalt not strike it. Now, he didn't give him that. He just obey him now. And that's what we're doing.
It also ended the Christians did not have to go to Jerusalem every year like the Jews did.
That's right. That's right. That's a good point. The whole
Emphasis on the local congregations.
yeah.
Jerry, the overall principle is in Galatians 5 and verse 3. If we start picking things out of the Old Testament, we're debtors to the wrong.
Yeah.
The problem in Galatians 5 was circumcision, but if you pick out keeping the Sabbath, if you pick out instrumental music, whatever you're picking out, you're making yourself a debtor to the whole law.
You got to do the whole.
And that's the point Paul's making in Galatians, is that you're not under the law.
That's right. David.
Mary, I feel like as Christians, we need to be very conversant with the 7th chapter of Hebrews, and in particular, I'd like to bring our attention to verses 12 and 14. 12, for when the priesthood is changed, of necessity there takes place a change of law also. We drop down to verse 14. For it is evident that our Lord was descended from Judah, a tribe with reference to which Moses spoke nothing concerning priests. We're not under the Aaronic priesthood. Jesus from the tribe of Judah. That right there shows that the Old Testament is null and void.
No. And to get with the time of our season.
People, denomination of people, they need to be aware of this because they try to bring in the Old Testament, and we don't offer animal sacrifices either. So I notice it's cafeteria style that they want to bring in.
Yeah, that's just true. And why we have a priesthood that will never change because we have a priest who will never die, right? That was another reason for the Aaronic priesthood. You had to have a life. Well, Jesus is like Melchizedek. That's Hebrews 7. That we have no record of his death, birth or death. And Jesus Christ, he lives forever. And so he's after order of Melchizedek, fulfilling prophecy, he's our priest. So all those are good points, and especially the change in the law. So that will help us come to the New Testament to realize how exclusive that is on speaking and singing. Our voice is not an instrument. Okay, any other thoughts? All right, question number 22. How did Moses reason with Edom when Moses asked to pass through their land? So here we find this segment of why Aaron's going to be on Mount Hor. It's at the edge of Edom where he's going to die. But we're picking up now, there were messengers and Moses sent messengers from Kadesh, that's where Miriam's died, and the king of Edom. So they're heading east, and they're up there north near the Dead Sea anyway, and they just have to just go through Edom and go through. They're going to be south of Jericho. They're going to be coming through the land. That was a way to go. They're going to end up going way south before this thing's over to get around Edom. But this is the event that's taking place that explains that. He said, from Kadesh, the king of Edom, thus saith thy brother Israel. That's flesh and blood. And thou knowest all the travail that hath befallen us, how our fathers went down to Egypt. So he's explaining all the things they've gone through, and Edom, indeed, originally brethren, would be involved in knowing that. And he says, he sent an angel and brought us forth out of Egypt. He sent a messenger and brought us forth out of Egypt. And behold, we are in Kadesh, a city in the uttermost of thy border. Let us pass, I pray thee, through the land. And what we're seeing here, how did Moses reason with the king of Edom? What was his reasoning? When you read this text, explain it. What you're reasoning with the king of Edom about us coming through your land. How does he reason with him?
We won't eat, we won't drink, we just go through.
And we're not going through your vineyards and all that stuff. We're not, and our cattle and stuff. And even to the point, if we do eat or drink, we'll pay for it. You thought you just the first one to pay for bottled water. Well, think again. He's willing to pay for it. And what did the king do? No, and then he comes back. You better have plan B. And Moses had plan B. We'll just walk on the highway. We won't be trotting through your vineyards. We'll walk on the highway. It stands up. It's not farmland. It's how that tells you they had roads where they could travel. It's like the king's highway. Travel. We know the Romans were great with having roads in their day, but even here before, that we'll go on the highway. Now, what would be our highway today? Go back a few years, Spencer was a highway? No way. There's no highway. Yeah, it is. It got you to the port, to the beach. I'll show you pictures of everybody from Houston going on a train. They're going down Spencer Highway. It's a highway at that time because there wasn't a lot of things going on. And so it's something that stands high and you can observe, but it's not going to be part of the land. And our highways may have frontage roads. Everything's going to be so up, but the highway's higher. And we still have those concepts. He explained that to them. And if we do drink, if our cattle does drink, we'll pay for that. So what's the problem? So Esau and Jacob, those things are that the word against each other. Now here's the nation of Edom, and here's the nation of Israel. And he's not going to let the lineage of his brother come through there. And so he goes after them. And so here we find, they go from journey, verse 22, from Kadesh, and the whole congregation came unto Mount Hor, and that's where we find Abraham dying there. So reasoning didn't help, so they're not going to be able to have a straight course. How does the Lord describe Aaron's actions at the waters of Meribah? And we pick it up here. How does he describe them? Rebelling. You rebelled against me. Told you what to do, but Moses, the spokesman, for you, Aaron, was rash, and you rebelled against me. So what is not believing in God? How does he look at it? Well, obedience, and you disobey me, and he looks at it rebelling, doesn't he? No, I'm not rebelling against you, God. I just don't trust you enough. If we were going to be truthful to him, I don't rebel. I'm not a rebel. You're a rebel. You're rebelling against God. The command was distinct. Speak to it. There wouldn't be any striking. But his heart was so full of anger. He said, ye rebels. Well, I tell you, Moses and Aaron, you are a rebel to me. And Aaron was one of those that he addresses that too. So, question 24, what happened to Aaron in Mount Hor at the border of Edom? Moses has to do some things. He's commanded. And Moses stripped Aaron of his garments. So before he dies, he has his garments stripped, the high priest robes and so forth. And he put them on Eleazar, his son. So who's going to stand his place? Aaron's going to die. He's a high priest. Well, we got one stepping in his way. Jesus didn't die. We know one needs to step in his way. He's priest forevermore. But he put him on Eleazar, his son. Aaron died there on the top of the mount. And Moses and Eleazar came down from the mount. And when all the congregation saw that Aaron was dead, they wept for Aaron how many days? 30 days. There's another month go by. It's the 5th month, and we're going to be seeing about the 11th month. Things happen. We're going to have a little story about Balaam and the donkey in these next few chapters. But we got some more in chapter 21. We'll start lesson 5. Any comments you'd like to make before we close? Just be prepared. It's just interesting to me. Be prepared in chapter 21 to see, hey, all of a sudden they're having victories. He's preparing them to go into the land now. They're going to have to bypass Edom, but they're winning battles. How does God allow that to happen? He just put Aaron to death. Moses, you're not going to go into the land. And here, all of a sudden, they've lost their battles when they say, well, we'll go in the land now. No, I'm not with you. He's with them now. And all of a sudden, things are picking up as they're about to enter into that land, not too far distant future. Any thoughts or questions you might have before we close? Okay, thank you for being here and your comments.